funding so that the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, which I used to chair, and local law enforcement could better address today's recruitment challenges. Understand that nearly $29 million is just a start. We need to make sure that funding is sustainable to meet these recruitment issues. Unfortunately, the legislature has so far failed to meet that need, but I want you to know that we are certainly not letting up on that. Here's a few things that I believe the legislature and or PCCD could fund right now to have a significant impact, positive impact, on staffing and recruitment and retention. The first is a $6,000 signing bonus to help hire new officers in understaffed departments. Second is matching scholarships to cover the cost of the training known as Act 120 training required of police officers. That is critically important at a time when we are asking people to go through this training. They need to make sure that they have the resources to be able to do that. We also think, third, that we need matching funds so local departments, this is important, the mayor talks very passionately about this, can have crisis intervention and violence interruption units so local leaders on the front lines have the tools to be able to not just address the violence, but to address the very serious mental health needs in our communities today. We are asking more and more of police officers, particularly when it comes to mental health. We need to make sure that there are resources there to assist them in that work. I also believe that funding can't simply start when it comes to those who are in the process of applying to be a police officer. I think it is really critical that we go into high schools across Pennsylvania and invest in scholarship opportunities for high school students to consider careers in law enforcement, to let them know what it's really like to serve and protect a community, to help us bring about a more diverse group of applicants to our cities and our municipalities across this Commonwealth. Look, officers are essential workers that we need right now on the front lines. And we can't wait until the 911 lines are flooded where there isn't an officer available for an emergency. And we need to be thinking about this in the long term. As I said, we should be starting in high school when it comes to recruitment and retention. The mayor and the chief here in Lancaster talked about making $1 million investment in an individual to become a police officer here in the city. And they are incredibly careful about who they choose to allow to wear the badge of the Lancaster City Police Department, as they should. And they are making an investment in the long term. Let's make sure that the pot they are pulling from include more applicants, more diversity in those applicants, and that we have an application process that is fair and just and leads to positive outcomes. Look, we obviously have big issues to face, as we've seen with our work here with our partners all across Lancaster County and the neighboring counties. I want you to know in the Office of Attorney General, we regularly work together on operations that stop straw purchasers, for example. And we routinely and regularly partner with local law enforcement here on the ground to look out for illegal sales of guns at gun shows and on our streets, and we trace crime guns back to the sources, which is helping us solve crime under the leadership of Chief John Kitzinger in my office. I want you to know that in Lancaster, Lebanon, Bucks, Berks, York, and Dauphin counties this year alone, we have partnered to do 900 crime gun traces that is leading to positive and safer outcomes in our communities. But we also recognize in law enforcement that no single act, no single crime gun trace, no single arrest is going to make our communities safe. And law enforcement alone can't do that work. We all need to work together to listen to the community, as the mayor so ably does, to adapt our approach to policing, to make sure that police have with them the expertise in mental health to be able to address those challenges in our communities. And of course, we need a legislature in Harrisburg that understands that there are systemic issues underlying the violence that we are seeing. Poverty is a key driver to crime in our communities. a lack of education in every zip code. And by the way, our Commonwealth's Constitution requires a thorough and efficient education for young people in Pennsylvania. They don't distinguish between zip codes. We need to make sure that we have that in our education system. We need to do a far better job addressing drug and alcohol treatment. We simply do not have enough resources. One of the reasons why the $26 billion opioid settlement I announced not too long ago is going to be critical to regions like this. And of course, a key driver to the violence that we are seeing in our communities is the lack of mental health supports. We've got to make sure that that exists better in our Commonwealth. So what we need right now is not just more funding for our local police, but we've also got to continue to address some of these underlying systemic issues. This is obviously a critical time for law enforcement. More is being asked of this noble profession than ever before. The pressures are higher than ever, and the mission that the public has asked our officers to meet continues to grow. And folks like the mayor and I expect and demand more of our officers. The good news is the officers I talk to across the Commonwealth, they are ready, willing, and able to meet those challenges of our time, particularly around mental health issues. People all across this Commonwealth, I know, value local police. And we know collectively that local police must have the resources to do the work to keep our communities safe. When I walk the streets, I hear that from people in their homes and in their neighborhoods. They want more local police doing good work to keep their streets safe. I know that having strong partners at the local level is going to be key to addressing these challenges. Mayor Sirachi has been a tremendous partner and a great leader for other mayors across the Commonwealth. You're fortunate to have her, and I was fortunate to spend some time with her and her team today here in the hall. And with that, I'd like to welcome the mayor to offer some comments. Mayor?
Good morning. I want to thank you, Attorney General, for being here today. And it's not often that I have an opportunity to sit down and talk so candidly about some of the opportunities and challenges that are facing our police department, and I know that they are similar to those communities across the Commonwealth as I talk to other mayors. So you all know that we have 145 officers budgeted each year in the city of Lancaster, and we are at 138 right now, and that's probably our best that we have been in a number of years. But what that means is that as we look ahead to the inevitable retirements that are coming, we have to think long and hard about how we are recruiting new talent to serve the community, and that talent to reflect the community itself. We are really interested, obviously, in hiring folks who are bilingual. We are interested in folks who live in the city. We are interested in women applying, and we are not seeing that in the most recent consortium testing that took place on September 11th. And so I also just want to thank Chief Wiskowski and Chief Anders for being here to join Chief Bay and I in this conversation about the challenges, because every police department across the Commonwealth, and indeed across America, is experiencing this challenge related to recruitment. And I believe that with the right partnership and the right tools and the intention that we can work to address this over the long term. This is not going to quickly resolve itself. We also know on the flip side that we have real challenges related to call volume as it relates to mental health. All of the police chiefs that are standing behind me can tell you about the call volume as it relates to mental health. We know that 20% to 30% is probably an underestimate in terms of call volume related to mental health, which relates to the ability of our team to be able to meet the needs of our community. We also know that through the Engage Lancaster platform, as we've been talking about how to use the American Rescue Plan funds, I believe the #1 voted issue of concern for our city is around mental health and mental health services. And that just speaks to between what the community is saying through that survey as well as what we're seeing in terms of our call volume, that these are needs that need to be addressed, and they cannot be addressed singly by our police officers. And that is going to require continued partnership across the county with our government and as well as nonprofit partners to address these needs. I'm pleased with some of the progress we're making. We know we need to make more progress, and we're just going to need to continue to elevate these issues over time to really address them. So again, I want to thank the AG for the opportunity to talk about these challenges, where the opportunities lie, and some of the ways that we can continue to elevate these issues collectively. And with that, I want to introduce Chief John Bay, Chief of the Lancaster City Police Department, to talk a little bit about some of the changes that we're making related to recruitment under his leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to first take the opportunity to thank the AG for coming down and spending some time with us, to lend a very sympathetic ear to the challenges that we have in the city with regard to recruiting, retention, all the things that he addressed in the mayor. Also, I want to thank Chief Andrews and Chief Wiskowski, who are retired captains from this police department, who have their own issues to deal with regarding the same subject matters in their own respective police departments, but they too took time to come down here in Lancaster City and lend their expertise and their perspective, having been in this police department for well over 20 years apiece and retiring from it. So thank you all for coming down. I appreciate it. Recruitment period, I believe, and as we talked about in our meeting today, is a challenge for all police departments across the Commonwealth, and certainly here in Lancaster City as well. We believe that you have to be very intentional with regard to your strategies for recruiting, and that's what we're doing here in Lancaster. But understand that we work within the confines and the parameters of the civil service regulations with regard to our selection process. And so we have to be intentional with our entry points into that system, if you will, in order to be effective with our recruiting. One of the very first things that we did was kind of look at the selection process. And part of that selection process requires an oral board interview of the candidate. And so we moved that oral board interview from what was once the final step in the selection process to right after the written test. We waited the outcome of that oral board to be more than the written test. We weighted it at 80%, or I'm sorry, at 60%. And then we were very intentional about the questions that we developed. We hired a police psychologist, a consultant, to develop questions that would identify our core values and also identify attributes that lend itself to a person being successful in policing and having a long career in policing. And so we did that, and then we also had another professional consultant take a look at our questions and determine that they were free of bias, and so that we weren't unintentionally excluding someone from the process by virtue of the questions that we asked. And so we're very intentional about that, and we just had an oral board rating training yesterday with that consultant, who provided implicit bias training for our oral board raters, so that when we have this our interviews coming up after the recent test, that we're assured that we are doing everything that we can to be inclusive rather than exclusive with regard to the people that are in our selection process. So that's one of the most I guess important aspects of the changes that we made with regard to recruiting. Listen, it's about partnering with our community, and we understand that in order to effectively recruit here in the city of Lancaster, that we have to have people in our community who have influence over the young folks that we're recruiting. So we want to build that rapport, we want to build that trust and that relationship and that legitimacy within our community, so that those people can be advocates of this police department with regard to their interactions with these young folks, and putting our police department out there and saying, hey, you should consider coming on to this police department. So those are just a couple of the things that we're doing here in Lancaster City that I think will pay dividends. Listen, it's going to be a long process, right? We're not going to. I don't think we're going to see substantial changes in the very near future, but I can almost guarantee that we'll see those over a course of time. And I'll be happy to report out that, you know, those changes are in effect, and the fruits of our labors are being recognized in the very near future. So thank you.
Well, thank you all. The mayor's agreed to answer all the hard questions if you have any. So with that, fire away. Yeah.
So you said the need is for bilingual and women candidates. You also mentioned going into school, but how are you exactly going to find these candidates? What tools or methods do you have in place?
Sure. I'm going to answer that, and then maybe the mayor and the chief want to jump in. This is a noble profession. I'm sorry? This is a noble profession. This is a profession that is often also misunderstood. It's a profession that requires some real reform, and one of the best ways we address all of that is by expanding the reach of who we go to encourage them to consider a career in law enforcement. Some of this certainly will be addressed with dollars and cents to make sure that we incentivize people to apply, incentivize people to come in and stay retained. But a lot of it is going to be reaching out to communities, particularly communities of color and women, who oftentimes feel like there is not a career for them in law enforcement. I have seen that in my agency, where our agent command right now, under the leadership of Chief John Kitzinger, has 2 deputies who are men of color. That has not only impacted the way we train and the way we think about operations, but the way we're able to recruit new people into our agency, because they see individuals who look like them and would be maybe more interested in a career in law enforcement, the Office of Attorney General, because they know they have a future there. I think a big part of it is on all of us to reach down into communities that have oftentimes been ignored and say, we want you to be part of this building process. We want you to be a part of new policing, not just here in Lancaster City, but all across the Commonwealth.
So to address your question more specifically, there are 2 things that we have in place that will reach our students. We have our SROs, our school resource officers, who are in our schools daily interaction with the students, and being that role model and building that relationship with our students, so that, you know, they have somebody to talk to with regard to this profession. We also have a cadet program that any student who's interested in becoming a police officer, will hire them here until such time that they're able to, they're of age to go to the police academy. And they can come aboard, they can see what it's like to actually work in a police bureau and get a feel for the profession. So those have paid dividends for us with regard to reaching out to students and being that conduit from school right to the police department.
You have 145 budgeted and 138 sworn officers now. What would you say if somebody said, well, you're almost at capacity? Is there an improvement problem?
What would I say to who about what?
To somebody who might say, you're almost at your numbers, you're almost at 100%. So is there an improvement problem?
Well, the caveat to that is that in January, potentially 37 officers can retire and walk out the door.
You're expecting and planning for that?
Well, not expecting it, no. But listen, you have to have strategies in place, right? You can't wait until they walk out the door to all of a sudden go out and start recruiting. And so we have to be very intentional about keeping the queue filled with potential officers.
And if I could just follow on to that, I think the other part of this is that we're seeing the number of people who are taking the test declining year after year. And so last year, what it was, 180 that took the test. This year it was 110 of those that passed. It was 79 that passed, and that was just the physical. We haven't even gotten the written back yet. And so when we're looking at this holistically, for not just for the city of Lancaster, but for the county, because this is the county consortium test, we're all worried because we all know that we have people that are currently serving our communities who are of retirement age, and they can decide that they're going to retire. So who's coming behind them? So when we're looking at this, we're at a really good staffing level now, but where we are next year or the year after that, this is a long process. If you want to be a police officer, you got to be planning 12 to 18 months because you have to work in your time to get through the test. The tests are only offered once a year in September. You have to be signing up for the academy. The academy is a 6-month process. Then you're onboarding. By the time that officer has gone through the academy and had the training in the department where they're serving, we're talking about 2 years, really, of intense training and preparation to be an officer. So we got to get ahead of this, and we're a little worried right now, given the fact that we are seeing the decline in applicants. And so we need everybody to be helping us and thinking about who do you know that would be interested in having a conversation with Lancaster City Police Department or other police departments in the county about this as a career option. What do you need to know? What are you curious about? How can we answer your questions? These are very good paying jobs. These come with great benefit package. There's an opportunity that you are going to be here for 20, 25 years and leave with a pension that is going to serve you and your family. I have officers tell me, thank me, like because of you. Actually, I think it was maybe Chief Wiskowski, you said this. You know, it was the mortgage payment. This city paid for their house, the house that they live in, that they're retiring in. Am I saying that right? Yeah. And you know, so this is part and parcel of what we're up against are the numbers. Like, we're just not getting enough applicants. We need everybody's help.
When I hear from the other chiefs, where do you stand staffing-wise?
So I have 2 open positions at a failed search. I'm at Milwaukee University, Peter Hinders. We had a failed search. We hired 3 officers. So we've hired for non-patrol positions in 10 years. I've hired 21 officers. So that's not real good as far as retention. Part of that is we bargain at the state level, the 14 state universities. So, you know, some of the areas, Mansfield, you're living like a king on the salary that we get here. So that is one of our slight woes, but we are seeing drops in application. And we've seen that both at the county level, with the county consortium, and with the process that we do. I also want to note that one of the things John Day did this summer, we had an opportunity to address about 110 first-year students. Most of them were students of color and also women. And he used a piece of that not just for recruiting. We had very candid conversations about race, about what some struggles in first-year experiences for anybody. But I think the other piece is we have a lot of students. I'll just use Millersville as an example. They're not even really thinking about policing as an option because it's a tough time nationally at that level between social media and everything else, that I think when you have people come in and our students can see the face behind the uniform, like with John and also Kimmy Geyer is a sergeant in Manor Township, and they see somebody who looks like them, that's a woman in a police officer uniform, and they're talking very real. That's a really positive thing for us to look at. How do we better reflect our communities both locally and in our region?
Yeah, Brian Wiskowski with West Lancaster Township Police Department. I was hired in West Lancaster in 2014 and retired from the city. Since that time, we have 17 officers. We had 14 when I started. We have 17 officers now. I've hired 6 people, 6 cops. Expect to lose up to 4 between now and probably mid next year. So again, yes, this is a very real problem for every agency that's out there. You know, you're talking if I lose 4 officers, that's 10 out of 17 officers that I've hired in a very short period of time. So those 81 people that passed that exam so far, that just passed a physical test, that's a pool that all of us in the county are pulling from. So yeah, it's a problem. It's a significant problem, and you know, we add to that the training process to get a cop. Once that cop goes through that process, goes through the academy, gets hired, goes through the academy, they then have to go through field training. Which then they're off the street for 2 to 3 months, or with another officer for 2 to 3 months, and and kind of learning the ropes there. So it is a very long process. It's a big ship. The bottom line is it's a big ship. It takes a while to turn the corner, and so we have to prepare now.
Can I ask a question? What do you attribute the lack of applicants to, and can you address morale in the light of a number of high-profile cases where, a few officers behave badly or criminally? Has that had an impact on other departments that your officers are concerned they're being painted with a broad negative brush and maybe leading some to retiring? I know it's a multi-part question, sorry.
Look, to be honest with you, the national narrative doesn't help. It's not helping. I maintain, excuse me, I maintain this. If you go into neighborhoods, you go into those tough neighborhoods, and you tell some of those neighbors that you're going to pull cops from their neighborhood, they're going to be less than happy. My feeling, my sense, my experience is those people in those tough neighborhoods want cops. Cops being painted with in a very broad brush. No one likes that to be done. Cops don't like it either. The huge majority of cops are doing a great job day in and day out. Sure, there are problems. There's no doubt. And as a profession, we need to do a better job of getting rid of the problems, hiring the right people. Chief Bay is doing an outstanding job trying to set that up. Again, it's a long process, though. So the national narrative isn't helping. That certainly is impacting our numbers, because it's not just Lancaster County numbers have suffered. It's certainly across the nation that suffered. I'm looking at this as hopefully as a pendulum. I've been on the job since 1990. I've gone through where the cops are evil. I've gone through where the cops are the heroes, back to evil. It tends to swing back and forth like that. But we needed a sustainability, and Chief Anders pointed out social media is something that we have now that we didn't deal with as much in the early 90s. That stuff certainly isn't helping, that's for sure.
Anybody else?
So what can people do, how can they get involved? Because I know the test comes once a year in September, but how can people get involved with the police department moving forward?
Well, people can get involved. We have a lot of community events here in Lancaster. And in fact, we have one coming up early October down at Brightside Church, Public Safety Day. And so, and that will end pretty much in the summer's events. But we have events all summer long. Coffee with a Cop, public safety events. I have a recruitment team, Office of Community Engagement, that are in the city, helping out at churches and doing all sorts of things that are non-enforcement. And the community can help by engaging our officers, get to know the person inside the uniform, get to know that person is a father or a mother, or brother, sister, uncle, and engage them and develop and partner with them to develop that rapport, and then advocate on behalf of the police department. People want change in their police department. My question is, what better way to affect real change than from internally? And then when you come aboard, do what it takes to get promoted, to be put into a position where you're writing policy or impacting policy and holding people accountable. That's how you affect change internally, real change. So that's how the community can help us. Be advocates for us. Get to know us. We're out there. We instituted the bike patrols. We have people on bikes out in the community to engage our community members. Go up and say hello and have a conversation. We won't bite, I promise you. Nobody will bite them. They're just regular people, but we have a job to do. But thanks for that question.
Thanks, everyone. That's all the time we have. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
That's